The morning sun hit the dashboard, turning the plastic to a searing white. David adjusted the rearview mirror, checking the flow of city traffic before pulling into the designated lane. In the back seat, his passenger tapped rapidly on a glass screen, voice rising as he debated the terms of a multi-million-dollar property deal. David kept his eyes fixed on the intersection ahead, but every syllable of the conversation drifted forward. He heard the numbers 6 figures, 7 figures, equity stakes floating through the recycled air of the car. He glanced down at his own fuel gauge, then mentally tallied the hours left in his shift against the meager balance waiting in his account. The cycle was relentless. Traffic lights turned red, people stepped in and out, and his bank account remained a static, immovable object. He gripped the steering wheel, his fingers tracing the worn leather, and felt the familiar, bitter pull of the invisible wall between them. He was driving the architects of the city, listening to the blueprints of their lives while his own remained trapped in the slow lane of the morning commute. He was not just driving a car, he was chauffeuring opportunity while he sat in the passenger seat of his own existence. The car pulled up to the curb, tires crunching against the concrete. The passenger slammed the door shut, leaving behind the faint, lingering scent of expensive cologne. David watched him walk toward the glass-fronted office building, his stride confident, his mind clearly miles ahead in some high-stakes boardroom. The automatic doors slid open and swallowed him whole. David remained in the driver's seat, engine idling, staring at the sterile, reflective surface of the tower. He looked at his own hands resting on the wheel. He squeezed. His knuckles turned white, the skin stretching thin over bone, a physical manifestation of years of suppressed pressure. It was not bad luck that kept him here. He realized it was a vacuum of knowledge. The people he drove did not just work harder, they understood the levers of the world. He felt the shift deep in his chest. The resentment drained away, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. He looked at the empty passenger seat, then at the road ahead. If the gap between his life and theirs was a language he did not speak, he would learn it. He shifted into drive, not to complete another shift, but to begin a departure from the life he had known. That evening, David skipped the flickering glow of the television. He walked to the car and pulled the passenger seat forward, clearing the floor mats of stray crumbs and discarded wrappers. In their place, he stacked heavy volumes on real estate, finance, and market theory. The weight of the books anchored the seat, turning the vehicle into a library on wheels. He sat in the driver's seat, the engine cold, and opened the first chapter. Every spare minute of his day now belonged to the pages. When the traffic light turned red, he did not stare at the bumper ahead. He flipped a page, his eyes scanning lines of tax law and property valuation before the light turned green. He studied in the gaps between ride requests, his focus absolute. The car was no longer just a tool for transit. It was his classroom. He replaced the passive noise of the radio with the internal monologue of complex financial analysis. He realized that the time others spent in idle chatter or aimless scrolling was the very time he could leverage to bridge his divide. He set his watch, marked his progress, and prepared for the long, quiet grind of self-education that would redefine his future. The next morning, the car became a hunter's blind. David did not just drive, he engaged. When a passenger mentioned a fluctuating market trend, David did not nod passively. He leaned forward, eyes fixed on the rearview mirror, and asked, "How did you calculate the yield on that?" The passenger, surprised by the technical precision of the question, began to explain. David absorbed every syllable. He listened for the logic behind the numbers, the specific tax laws cited, and the nuances of property negotiation. As the car moved through traffic, his right hand left the gear shift to snatch up a crumpled receipt or a discarded napkin. He scribbled furiously. He captured formulas, interest rates, and insider tips in jagged, rushed handwriting. A phone bill became a ledger. A fast food napkin turned into a masterclass on valuation. He was harvesting secrets from the people sitting just inches behind him. When the trip ended, he pocketed the scrap of paper like gold dust. He did not care about the destination of the ride. He cared about the information extracted during the journey. His glove box began to overflow with these salvaged fragments of professional wisdom. Every ride was a lecture, and every passenger was a teacher he had not yet paid for. The hunt for information had ended. The war of attrition began. David looked at his monthly ledger and drew a red line through every expense that was not survival. He traded coffee shop lunches for bulk-bought oats kept in a plastic container under his seat. He stopped buying bottled water, filling a metal canteen from the tap before his shift. Every dollar was a soldier, and he refused to let a single one desert. He worked 14-hour shifts, ignoring the ache in his shoulders to maximize the daily intake. When the car needed a repair, he did not visit a shop. He bought the part, watched a manual, and spent his nights in the driveway, hands slick with oil and grit, fixing it himself. He watched his bank balance. It grew with agonizing slowness. He checked the numbers every morning before starting the ignition. He felt the hunger in his stomach but ignored it, focusing instead on the phantom shape of a down payment. He lived in a state of permanent scarcity, wearing the same thin layers regardless of the season to save on heating and laundry. He was not merely saving money, he was buying his way out of the driver's seat. Every cent he banked felt like a brick in a wall he was building against his old life. He was ready. The office was quiet, smelling of floor wax and stale coffee. David sat across from the cellar, the stack of documents spread out between them like a map to a different life. He had spent years turning his car into a library and his life into a ledger. Every cent he had scraped together, every meal he had skipped, and every hour he had pushed his body beyond exhaustion was now concentrated into the balance of his bank account. The seller slid the purchase agreement forward. David looked at the signature line. The paper was smooth, white, and heavy with consequence. His hands rested on the mahogany surface, and for a second, he could not make them move. He thought of the endless traffic lights and the backseat conversations that had provided the blueprint for this day. He picked up the pen. It felt cold against his fingers. He took a breath, held it, and pressed the nib to the paper. His hand trembled, a sharp, visible shake that he could not suppress. He signed his name once, then again, and finally a third time. He pushed the folder back across the table. The transaction was complete. The money was gone. In its place, he held the keys to a building that no longer belonged to anyone but him. He walked out into the afternoon light, empty-handed but anchored to the ground for the first time. David unlocked the front door of his first investment, the key turning with a heavy, satisfying click. He stepped inside, ready to inspect the walls he had sacrificed years to own. The air was thick with the smell of damp plaster and old wood. He walked toward the kitchen, his boots clicking on the floorboards. Then, a low, rhythmic thud echoed from above. A brown stain bloomed across the ceiling, spreading like ink in water. Before he could react, the plaster gave way. A torrent of gray, foul-smelling water crashed down, shattering the ceramic sink and spraying across the floor. David lunged back, but the spray soaked his face and arms. He scrambled to reach the main valve, but the pipes groaned, vibrating with a violent, metallic shriek. Water pooled rapidly, soaking the baseboards and seeping into the subfloor. He dove under the sink, fingers clawing at the rusted shutoff handle. It would not budge. The sound of rushing water drowned out his own breathing. He looked up at the ceiling, where a jagged hole continued to weep, threatening to collapse the entire structure. The dream he had worked years to secure was dissolving into a pile of sodden rot in seconds. He was alone in the dark. The floor beneath him turning to mud, and the cost of the repair was already climbing beyond his reach. David stopped moving. He watched the water churn against the floorboards and forced his pulse to slow. He closed his eyes for a split second, visualizing the schematics he had memorized in the driver's seat. He ignored the ruin around him and traced the line of the main supply pipe with his eyes. It was not a disaster. It was a hydraulic failure. He shoved a heavy bucket under the spray to dampen the flow and grabbed his flashlight. He crawled into the cramped crawl space, the beam cutting through the gloom. He found the junction where the pressure had burst the seal. His hands, calloused from years of gripping a steering wheel, moved with precision. He reached for his wrench. He did not call a plumber. He had studied the local building codes and pipe specifications for months. He tightened the collar, applied a layer of sealant he kept in his kit, and turned the pressure valve a quarter turn. The shriek of the metal quieted. The torrent had yasked into a drip, then a steady, manageable trickle. He sat back in the dark, his breath steadying. He had spent his last dollar on this building, but he had spent his last years preparing for this exact failure. He wiped the mud from his face, picked up his tools, and began to patch the floor. The crisis was contained. The first unit became a laboratory. David tracked every dollar of maintenance, every tax deduction, and every lease renewal until the profit margins stabilized. He did not sell. He used the cash flow to secure a second down payment. He scanned the city for properties that others marked as liabilities, buildings with neglected foundations or failing roofs that scared away traditional investors. He walked through these structures, calculating the exact cost of repairs against the potential rental yield. He bought a crumbling duplex on the east side, then a vacant warehouse near the rail yards. He applied the same logic to each: identify the structural weakness, execute the repair himself, and maximize the occupancy rate. The workload tripled. He spent his days inspecting rafters and his nights reviewing property tax files. He treated the city like a chessboard, moving his resources to capture undervalued territory, while others chased trends. One building turned into 5, then 10. He transformed his bank statements from a ledger of expenses into a balance sheet of assets. The cycle of preparation and execution became his engine. He stopped looking for passengers and started looking for opportunities. Within 3 years, the small apartment that nearly ruined him was just one brick in a foundation that spanned the city skyline. David turned the steering wheel, guiding the sedan through a familiar intersection. He looked up at the glass-fronted towers, recognizing the specific brickwork and roof lines he had personally restored. The city moved around him, a blur of traffic and motion, but he held a steady pace. He pulled over at a curb to wait for a ride request. A young man hopped into the passenger seat, his eyes glued to a glowing screen, tapping rapidly. The driver looked at David, noticing the calm in his posture, and asked, "How do you do it? How do you own half these buildings while I am still chasing fares?" David leaned back against the headrest, looking out at the skyline. He did not point to his bank account or his title. He gestured to the glove compartment where a thick, worn manual on property law sat tucked away. "I did not start with money," David said. "I started with a book." The driver looked at the manual, then out at the street. David shifted the car into gear and pulled back into the flow of traffic. The empire was visible to everyone, but the work that built it remained in the quiet, empty hours of the past. Knowledge was the only asset that no market could crash.